Alright guys, welcome back. We are in the middle of looking at a DBQ and we are trying our best to kind of break it down piece by piece so that you know what to expect when you're doing the APUSH DBQ for real on the test. The next step we're going to look at is what's called the HIP analysis. HIP, an acronym for historical situation or context, intended audience, purpose, that is the author's purpose, and point of view of the author. Now, in a normal year, what you would do is you would explain the significance of the author's point of view, purpose, context, audience, so forth, of at least 4 documents. This is known as sourcing. You do this at least for 4 of the 7 documents on a normal year. We're not doing that. Okay, for this year and this year only, what you're going to do is you're going to do 1 or 2 documents. For 1 or 2 documents, explain how or why the document's point of view, purpose, situation, that is to say context, and audience is relevant to an argument. Now notice it says 1 or 2. You can earn no points by not doing enough documents or doing them incorrectly. You can earn 1 point, or you can do 2 documents and earn 2 points. So again, instead of doing 4 out of 7, you're doing now 1 out of 5 or 2 out of 5, hopefully 2 out of 5, because this really, I think, is one of the easier parts of the actual DBQ, because remember, you don't have to do all of this for 1 or 2 documents. You do 1 of these for 1 or 2 documents, right? So you have a lot of things to choose from with these documents. Well, let's run back through our documents and actually look at what the College Board themselves put out there as far as things that would count as purpose, context, audience, or let's go back through the acronym: historical situation, intended audience, point of view, and purpose. So let's kind of go through these. Again, you don't have to do all those. You're doing 1 of those components for 1 or 2, hopefully 2 documents. Let's look at it. So from the College Board perspective, again, this is with elaborating. That's the key. With elaboration, you could use any of these 3 here at the top. For context, you could say importance of growing American trade and commerce with Britain. For purpose, you could tell us that British manufacturers capitalized on and profited from the Stamp Act crisis. For audience, you could tell us that the audience would be consumers in Britain and in the American colonies themselves. So that is what they're looking for. Again, you're doing 1 of these, not all of these, 1 of these for 1 or 2, hopefully 2 of the 5 documents. So I do want to go back to one thing though really quickly before I move on. It's not enough just simply to say the purpose of this document was to, and then you fill in the blank. You have to explain. I mean, you're going to tell us that, of course, what the purpose was, but you're also going to tell us why that purpose is relevant to the argument you made in your thesis. So this is why thesis is so important. We're going to go through the thesis in the next video, or a video in the future, and everything has tied back to that. So it's not just saying, okay, the purpose of this is, the point of view of this is. You have to tell me, extend that. Why is that relevant to the claim you're making in your thesis? So that was document 1. Let's look at document 2, the House of Burgesses document. For context, they would say context would be concepts in the resolves, that's to say this thing right here, spread to the other colonies which adopted similar resolutions, long-standing autonomy of colonial legislature. So that is something I mentioned in the previous video. They had 150 years literally of self-government in Virginia before these resolves were passed. That's the context. Audience: other British North American colonial assemblies, the British Crown and Parliament. I think you could also argue just, I think the colonists of Virginia specifically. Document 3, Sam Adams, rights of the colonists. Remember, Sam Adams was their patriot. Point of view: political leader, patriot, member of Sons of Liberty. I want to reiterate, you would not want to simply just say that the point of view of document 3 is that Sam Adams is a patriot. Okay, that's important, but you need to extend it by telling us why that's relevant to your argument. Purpose: apply Enlightenment ideas to support the growing calls for colonial independence. We mentioned Rousseau with the social contract, and Locke, this idea of breaking away from this society and joining another. For context, that's historical situation. the growth in the transatlantic exchange of concepts of republicanism. Republicanism, that's a really good one right here. You can definitely see Republican ideas coming through. And again, little r Republican, not modern day Republican. Document 4, these are our Quakers. What could we use from this document? Well, the context or historical situation would be the pacifism among our Quakers. They don't want to go to war. They don't believe in violence. They don't believe in taking oaths, any of that stuff. The purpose, they're going to apply those pacifist principles to the revolutionary situation going on in their day and age of January of 1775. They want to prevent a war with and declaration of full independence from Britain. They want to maintain their connection to the king. That's the purpose of the authors in question. Document 5. This is Janet Shaw once again. She's a Scottish woman living in, or visiting anyways, her brother in Wilmington, North Carolina. So for a point of view, they suggest that it's an upper-class woman critical of the treatment of loyalists of the Revolution and of loyalists who submitted to patriots. Now, how do they get upper-class women from this? Well, this is a good example of how they want you to infer things from the documents. A couple things. Number one, she's visiting her brother in North Carolina. So she has the money and time to travel across the Atlantic just to simply visit a relative. Okay, most Americans today don't even have the money to do that. So do that in 1775 would be a lot of money. It tells us she's probably up in society somewhere. Also, her document is called Journal of a Lady of Quality. That's not something a person at the bottom of society would be writing, because they wouldn't be writing at all. She also talks about the lower sort in sort of a dismissive tone. So we've got the feeling she's definitely upper class. That's where they get the upper class woman up here. For purpose, this is going to challenge the idea that independence movement had broad support. Clearly it wasn't, because some people in North Carolina felt pressured into and feeling they had no other choice but to join the Patriots. And clear, this woman, we can probably assume her brother as well, were against this patriot movement. Context. Loyalists found their interests threatened. Right? That's the context. And clearly, I mean, they're going to shoot your pigs. That's threatening. Document 6. We've got our Anglican minister, once again, Charles Inglis, something. I don't know. Purpose. What's the purpose? We're going to undermine the independence movement. Undermine means weaken, of course. Growing economic instability in the colonies would be your context. And as we talked about in the last video, you've got Anglican Church, Church of England. That's what Anglican means. Sympathetic to Britain. That makes sense. That's the context. Our final document, for your point of view, we've got a patriot, and Thomas Paine, supporter of the patriot cause, supporter of the revolution, a founding father, whatever you want to call him. That's his point of view. His purpose is to make that emotional appeal, right? These are the times that try men's souls. I mean, that's a pretty emotional statement. So his purpose is to get people back on board with a revolution that was faltering. Faltering means weakening or beginning to collapse. Your context. We had some pretty bad losses. The Continental Army is looking pretty demoralized. Enlistments down. I mean, who's going to enlist in a war that you can't win? And so the purpose and the context are really, tied together here. We're trying to get people back on board because the army is beginning to look like it's going to fall apart. We're kind of at the tipping point where if it goes any further, the revolution is going to fail. And so this is kind of almost like a Hail Mary attempt to get people back on board. So that is, again, our HIP analysis. Let's just run really quickly back through what HIP even means. Historical situation and context at the H, intended audience, P, the first P, purpose, second P, point of view, again, of the author, both. Remember, we're not doing this. Forget about that. This year, we're doing 1 or 2 documents. Think 2, because you want both points. Explaining how and why the document's point of view, purpose, historical situation, or audience is relevant to an argument. And an argument means your thesis. And we're going to talk about the thesis here in just a second. So the next video we're going to look at is putting it all together, actually going through the writing of the essay. Let's do that.